The ghost of Robert Burns stumbles in a ghostly Westminster. Let the fun begin. It's Burns Night 2025. It was a night unlike any other in Westminster. The moon, nearly full and hanging lazily in the sky, cast an eerie glow over the ancient streets. The wind howled, carrying with it a cold chill that swept through the grand stone buildings of the British political heartland. Yet this was no ordinary evening. This was Burns Night, and this particular night was about to get spiritual. This narrative is sponsored by Polly Speaks For You. The creator of Polly Speaks For You has always been passionate about empowering individuals, especially those with disabilities or learning challenges, through text-to-speech and voice recognition technology. Polly Speaks For You isn't just a tool. It's a bridge for people to communicate and interact with the world in a meaningful way. By blending historical storytelling with cutting-edge tech, the creator showcases how powerful a voice can be, whether telling your own story or preserving history. So hit that like, share, and subscribe button and help this channel grow. Now back to the story. At the stroke of midnight, as the sound of Big Ben's chimes echoed through the misty streets, there was a flash, a gust of wind, and then poof, the ghost of Robert Burns appeared right in the middle of Parliament Square. His tartan kilt fluttered as he materialized, looking confused but rather dashing for a ghost. He blinked his spectral eyes and surveyed the surroundings. What in the name of all things haggis is this place? Burns muttered. I thought I'd be wandering through the moors of Scotland, not amongst a pile of old stone and ghostly politicians. This is no place for a poet like me. With a dramatic swoosh of his ghostly cloak, Burns staggered forward, only to realize he was floating. He stumbled midair, landing softly as he grasped the nearest lamppost. Oof, it's like trying to walk on a cloud, he grumbled, not used to this whole being dead business. Just as he was about to adjust to his ghostly form, a strange and distant sound reached his ears. It was a tune, unmistakable to any Scottish soul, a bagpipe. He turned in the direction of the music, his eyes widening. That's the sound of home. Who's playing my tune in this forsaken place? Burns drifted toward the sound, and to his astonishment there, floating in midair, was a spectral bagpiper, his ghostly fingers dancing across the pipes. The eerie melody echoed throughout Westminster, as if it were a siren call to every wandering ghost in the vicinity. Well, if that doesn't wake up the afterlife, Burns muttered, his voice full of mischief. Let's see who else has come to the party. He followed the music like a ghost drawn to a light, finally arriving at the grand doors of the House of Commons. A cloud of mist parted as he stepped inside, but what he saw inside wasn't quite what he expected. The Parliament chamber, though empty of the living, was brimming with spectral figures. The ghostly forms of former prime ministers, members of Parliament, and aristocrats sat in their seats, some looking entirely too formal for the occasion. Winston Churchill's ghost, his cigar still held firmly in hand, gave a brief nod to the new arrival. Nearby, Margaret Thatcher's ghost scowled at the proceedings, still holding her infamous handbag. Burns remarked with a grin. I knew Westminster had a bit of a haunting reputation, but this is a right old ghost story. The spectral figures were murmuring amongst themselves, but as Burns entered, they all fell silent. It was as if they knew something extraordinary was about to happen. The ghost of Churchill raised an eyebrow. Well, Churchill's ghost said in his booming voice. What do we have here? A Scotsman in a kilt? This ought to be good. Burns, ever the showman, swept his ghostly cloak around, striking a pose like he was on stage at the Royal Edinburgh Festival. The name's Robert Burns, and I've come for a celebration. It's Burns Night, you see. A night for whiskey, poetry, and, as I've heard, parliamentary antics. The ghost of David Cameron stood up, clapping his hands. Mr. Burns, so good of you to join us. We've had a rather dull session of debates about ghostly taxes and afterlife trade deals. Why not liven things up a bit with a bit of your famous poetry? Burns raised a brow. I liven things up, you say? Well, you're in for a treat, my friend. And with that, he began to recite one of his most famous lines. Fair F.A., your honest, soncy face. Great chieftain o' the pudding race. The ghostly crowd erupted in laughter, some spirits even raising their invisible glasses in approval. "I'll be damned," muttered a passing ghost. "This Burns chap really knows how to liven up a room." But Burns wasn't done. With a dramatic flourish, he pulled a spectral whiskey bottle from thin air and tossed it to the phantom barmaid. "We'll need some whiskey for this crowd. Bring on the drinks, lass." As the barmaid, a ghost of a long-dead pubkeeper, floated over with a tray full of ethereal glasses, Burns continued his poem. "And now for the haggis," he cried. "Let it roll into this room like a storm, O Scotland." To everyone's surprise, a glowing, floating haggis appeared in the center of the room, hovering as if it were ready to be sliced open. The spirits gasped in awe. "I've never seen anything like this," said Churchill, eyeing the ghostly haggis. "Is that real?" Burns gave a wicked grin. "I real as the whiskey in your glass. Now, who's ready for a toast?" But before they could drink, the ghost of Margaret Thatcher piped up with a stiff, ghostly smile. "We shall not raise our glasses until we've discussed the fiscal implications of, the haggis. The economy of afterlife haggis, you know?" Burns raised a finger. "Madam, we've had enough of talk. Let's get to the fun." And with a snap of his ethereal fingers, he summoned the spectral piper back to the stage, the eerie melody quickening. In a flash, the ghosts began to rise from their seats, some a bit too gracefully, others stumbling like their mortal selves. Churchill led the charge, puffing on an invisible cigar and twirling his ghostly mustache. The spectral form of David Cameron jumped into an awkward jig, his ghostly form out of sync with the music, but no one cared. "Here's to freedom," Burns shouted, lifting his invisible glass. "Here's to the life we lived and the laughs we'll have in the afterlife." The ceilidh began, with spirits whirling and twirling in a wild dance across the spectral floor. The ghost of Sir Winston Churchill shouted, "No one does a jig like the Brits," and promptly knocked over a ghostly vase. Burns, in the middle of the chaos, couldn't help but laugh. He swirled with the ghostly crowd, moving like he was in the heart of a Highland gathering. As the night wore on, Burns kept the party going, reciting poems, making witty remarks, and orchestrating an epic game of ghostly charades, where even the most serious of the political spirits lost their formal composure. By dawn, the entire chamber was in disarray. Chairs knocked over, invisible whiskey bottles rolling across the floor, and the faint sound of a piper still playing in the distance. Burns had done it. He had brought the spirit of fun, freedom, and chaos to the staid halls of Westminster. As the first light of daybreak filtered through the ghostly windows, Burns stood triumphantly at the center of the room, a wide grin on his face. "That, my friends," he said with a gleam in his eye, "is how you celebrate Burns' night in the afterlife." And with that, he disappeared into the mist, leaving behind echoes of laughter, the scent of whiskey, and a parliament more confused than ever about the fiscal implications of dancing ghosts and flying haggis. Burns Night 2025 in Westminster, a night that would live on in ghostly legend, or at least until the next Burns Night. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. To learn more about South Africa's leading accessibility software, visit www.polispeaks4u.co.za and support this meaningful dyslexic initiative. Thank you for watching.